Georgia checking in at number one again this week after a win over Georgia Tech and Michigan's win over Ohio State. There was perhaps some discussion about Georgia not being number one coming into this thing, but that's not what happened. How do you describe that win over Georgia Tech on Saturday night? It was, I wouldn't say it was, somebody described it as sloppy. I just think that it was just a strange game in many ways. But for the Dogs, they're going to hold on to number one again here. Michigan did get some first place votes that they didn't have last week. There's some certainly very reactionary folks. I mean, Georgia had 61 first place votes last week, and they only have and Michigan didn't have any first place votes. Georgia with 52 this week, and then 10 for Michigan, and then Washington at UW at number 3. I mean, I'm just not sure. I don't. Sometimes I think folks just choose not to watch the games. I mean, there's no way that you'd rank Oregon in front of Washington State. Oregon behind Florida State or Washington. I understand Washington beat them 6 weeks ago, but I just don't know. So anyway, you go Georgia at 1, Michigan at 2, Washington at 3, Florida State 4, Oregon at 5. Oregon's probably playing better than anybody that's not Georgia. Then Ohio State at 6, Texas at 7, Alabama at 8, Mizzou at 9, Penn State at 10, the Rebels at 11, just narrowly outside the top 10 there. They almost caught and passed Penn State. Oklahoma at 12, probably the worst two-loss team in the country is Oklahoma or Louisville. I'm not sure which, but they're both pretty bad. Although Iowa's pretty bad too, the more I look at all of this. Anyway, Oklahoma at 12, LSU at 13, Arizona at 14, Oklahoma, LSU, Arizona, Louisville, Notre Dame, Tulane, Iowa, and then teams that don't matter. Why are we ranking James Madison and Liberty? I don't care that they're undefeated. It does. I mean, there's Clemson's not ranked. I just don't. You've got Oregon State ranked 8 and 4. You don't have Clemson up there. I understand. I'm just making the general point that some of these schools, there's no way they'd win these games, but we rank them nonetheless. So whatever. But and Tennessee's not ranked. How did Tennessee go from being? I don't know. Look, these rankings at the top, which for me are all that matters. Yeah, I mean Tennessee went from being ranked to unranked, and they won by like 1,000,000 points. So I know some of the guys that are voting in the AP poll. Some of y'all just what you're doing doesn't make sense, and you know what I'm talking about. It just doesn't make sense. So I think we got to be better on that front. Make sure you're checking this out. Listen, I've only got about not even 20 of these left. Someone bought one last night. So Double Dawg signed by Stetson Bennett. The link is down below. Take advantage of this today. I don't have a lot of these left. This is a great Christmas gift. Take advantage of this today. Obviously, we can't do all this sort of stuff without our buddies from EcoPoly. You're going to see more about EcoPoly later this week. There's a link down below to that as well. But take advantage of Double Dawgs while I have them left with the Stetson Bennett. There's not a lot left. It's a huge week for Georgia and Alabama and Florida State and everybody in this thing. I mean, it's just one of those weeks where everything comes together. It's going to really be a frenetic ending to a college football season that's been a fun one. We thought, a lot of us, that Georgia, Michigan, Ohio State, Alabama would be the teams that were sort of at the top and separating themselves. Well, they've gotten to the final games of the seasons respectively, and that's a lot of that's been true. But what's also been true is Oregon, I think, to me, is the team to watch moving forward. So this plays out like this if you're Georgia. I mean, this could really play out really, really well for Georgia on Saturday, or it could be the end of their season. So it's going to be one of the two. I don't know that there's a scenario where it's not one of the two, because Michigan is going to be the 2 unless Georgia loses. Michigan's going to play in the Rose Bowl one way or the other, all right? So Michigan's taken care of. There's nothing to discuss there. Iowa's a joke. I watched them. That Big Ten football is so bad, y'all, right now. I mean, it just doesn't look good. It's bad. But everything outside of Michigan is totally up in the air. I mean, in every way. I mean, does Georgia get in without beating Alabama? It's possible. I mean, they should be in, period. I mean, Georgia should just be in. They're one of the top 4 teams. It's obvious. It's clear. That you lose to number 8 shouldn't disqualify you, but, you could say the same thing about Ohio State. So you got to win when you got to win. I'm not sure I would say Ohio State's a top 4 team, but that's me. Everything after that, is complicated. So if Georgia loses, they probably will not go to the playoff. If Georgia wins, they certainly will go to the playoff. They certainly will go in as the number 1 seed because of wins over what will probably still be top 10 Alabama, top 10 Missouri, and number 11 Ole Miss. I mean, Penn State's not going to move past Alabama because Alabama lost to Georgia. So that would not happen. I think then you become, the winner of Washington, of UW and Oregon is going to get in. After that, you have this 3-ring thing, or really this Florida State and Texas thing. Should Texas get in over Florida State? This assumes that both teams win. What if they both lose? This assumes, X, Y, and Z that I'm not so certain. I'm not giving Florida State anything right now. I mean, the way they played against Florida was not impressive. It was impressive. The result was impressive, but the way they got there was not. So that's not good. But, if Georgia beats Bama, they will take on either Florida State or Texas. They would probably be a 14-point favorite over Florida State. I mean, so if you're at home and Georgia's beating out Alabama, you're going to be cheering for Florida State, period. I think they'd be a pretty significant favorite over Texas. I don't think it would be 14 points. And that's just my opinion or guess. I would think they'd maybe be anywhere from a 7 to 10 point favorite over Texas, and it might be more than that. I don't know. Michigan and Oregon, I mean, I would say Oregon should be favored to win that game maybe by a point or two. I know it won't be that way. But I know Michigan will kind of probably be the betting favorite. But the a lot of times I want to talk with y'all in our relationship here. I look at things as I go, and I'm going to do that right now when I go to check out some of the betting odds and the lines and so forth. I mean, right now Georgia is the number 2 betting favorite to win the national championship. Why are they number 2 slightly? Well, they got to play Alabama, and Michigan does not. So there's that. Right now, Alabama and Texas are the number 4 betting favorites to win the national championship. So what does that mean? It means that they both are in pretty good shape. Well, one problem here too is that Oregon and Washington have to play each other. I mean, the only person left here that doesn't have a comparable losing situation is Michigan. That's it. So everybody else, the odds are reflecting that. But now, when you take a look at these lines, Georgia is a 5.5 point favorite over Alabama. I mean, that's not an insignificant line. Once you get to a touchdown, that's a lot. Once you're past 4, you know who should sort of be winning the games. In most of college football, when you're a 5-point favorite or higher, your percentage chance of winning is about 65%. Georgia, in their games as a favorite, 7 points or fewer until they're not favored, is they're winning 75% of those games. So it's somewhere in that universe of where Georgia is coming in this game with Alabama. I think that's probably about right. I mean, Alabama can beat Georgia. They can. But they shouldn't. I mean, the better team is Georgia. Alabama's situation stopping the run yesterday in particular, which might not be a great example because of the way that Auburn runs. A lot of quarterback hanging out there. That was not a great look yesterday for Alabama. But when you look at run defense, I mean, Alabama is sitting there at number 33 in the country, allowing 128 a game after the other day. That was understandable. I mean after the Auburn game, it could be skewed slightly, but that's about midway through the SEC in terms of defending the run. So A&M was at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, they're number 6 in the SEC in that metric. So not great for Alabama, but listen, I think these rankings are about right. I'm not going to talk about James Madison, all the stupidity at the bottom, but I would have it. I would have Oregon as my 3, if not as my 2. I mean, all you got to do is watch them play. They're not escaping like Washington did, but Oregon will have their chance. I mean, like there's nothing really to discuss here. Oregon will get their shot, and they'll get their shot Friday night, and then the Dogs will have their shot on Saturday. A huge game with Alabama.